Jonathan, Sherman here. Today we're going to go over a stock trade that I did in a company called Home Solutions of America. They're a provider of specialty residential services, restoration, interior services. Basically, they're a contractor, home services contractor. They're very active in the Tampa area and became pretty well known during the hurricane season, and were a contractor that was benefiting from restoring homes that had been impacted by hurricanes in the Tampa area. Now, the reason I got involved in the stock was because they looked like they had some good momentum, business momentum. They had recently in their recent quarters reported good earnings and good sales growth. And the stock looked like it was about to move significantly higher. There was a lot of purchase volume going into the stock, which was reflected in the stock chart. You can see here, this is a press release from the company, and they summarize pretty much that they're a provider of restoration, construction, and interior services to commercial and residential customers. Now, later on, and this was unknown to the world at the time, but later on, the principals in the company were indicted on fraud charges, and one of the principals went to prison for the fraud charges because they were misrepresenting their financial results. But of course, that was not known to me or anybody else at the time. I made a pretty good profit in this stock. I made about 25%, and I had a lot of shares. Let's go into how the trade unfolded. This is my Form 4797, and it shows, it's my tax return, and it shows the trade I did in Home Services America. Now, I averaged into the stock over the course of a full month, actually. I started getting involved on March 23rd, and averaging in over that kind of time period. Basically, what I was doing, I was looking at the stock chart, and on pullbacks to the 10-day exponential moving average on these fast-moving stocks can sometimes be a good secondary entry point, especially if it's a fast-moving stock. And that's what I was doing here over the course of a month. It was pulling back to the 10-day exponential moving average, and every time it pulled back, I got in with a few more shares with a relatively tight stop, because if it breached that moving average, then I knew my concept wasn't right and it wasn't working and I had to get out. But as it turned out, it did work, and it worked over and over again over the course of a month, averaging in. So you can see that the trade here, I got out of all the trade on the 30th of May. And I'll just quickly go through the forms, the tax forms, so you can see all the different times I got in. This is purchases on March 23rd. And then I purchased some more here on the 31st. And then you can see here, I purchased another 1,000 on the 3rd of April, averaging in on those pullbacks to the 10-day exponential moving average. Bought some more shares on the 11th. Bought some more shares. That's the final share on the 11th. And then on the 13th, acquired some more shares. And then on the 17th, acquired another 1,000 shares. Then on the 18th, acquired another 1,000, another 1,200, so that's another 2,200 shares. And then on the 28th, I acquired the final batch of 3,000 shares. And these were all on pullbacks to the 10-day exponential moving average. Now let's go into how the trade count firms look on this stock trade. So I started getting in on the trade on the 23rd, and it was not a very expensive stock. It was a $7 stock. Bought the first 2,500 shares at 6.99 on the 23rd. And then another 500 at 7.05, another 1,000 at 7.05, 500 at 7, 3,000 at 7.05. I ended up with a total at the end of all this with 20,000 shares in the stock. So you can see I'm still buying shares. Bought another 1,000 shares at 6.27 on the 31st. Bought another 1,000 shares at 7.2 on the 3rd, April 3rd. Bought another 1,000 on the 11th for 7.49, just averaging up. Bought another 1,000 shares on the 13th at 7.76, a little higher for a pullback. On the 17th, bought another 1,000 shares at 7.92. And then on the 18th, bought another 1,000 shares at 8.2. And 1,200 shares at 8.2, so it's another 2,200 shares. Now try to maximize the profit you're making in a fast-moving stock. It's just buying on those pullbacks, averaging in. And moving your stop up so that you don't lose a bunch in case you're wrong. On 4/28, bought the final 3,000 shares at 9.35. So you can see I started buying at 6.99, and the final bit I bought at 9.35. I exited the trade all at once. At one point on this, I was up a little over 4 points on 20,000 shares. So at one point, I was up about $80,000 in the stock. But it turned tail and didn't recover from the pullbacks in May. It started falling really rather quickly and decided to lock in. It breached its 10-day moving average, 10-day exponential moving average, and then it breached its 20-day exponential moving average. And so I immediately started getting out of the stock, wasn't behaving right anymore, and ended up taking about 2.5 points in the stock. Even though it was up 4 points, gave back 1.5, and took out a $53,000 profit on the trade. So it was a good trade. You're never going to sell it perfectly, right? You're never going to sell it at the high, but you got to be happy with taking profits when you have them, and especially keeping an eye out for when a stock stops behaving right, so that you want to get out and take your profits. Here's all the sells that I did on the stock. It was 11, and you can see 10.35 was really falling pretty fast. 10.9, 10.42, 10.4, 10.71, 10.8. It was pretty sharp fall from where it was to what was happening on a day-to-day. Sold the final 30s, got all out on a single day, 10.85. You can see that my final amount that I got out here was 10.5, right? So the stock was falling. Oh, no, there's another. No, I did a little day trade. That's what this is about. I did a little day trade in the stock. But I got out of that big 20,000 position all in one day on the 30th. And so this is a trade that was a little hairy, right? It was really a straight ride up and then a straight ride down. And you got to be ready to take profits, and you got to watch these things every day. This is the kind of thing that I've been doing for a lot of years, making these kind of 20, 25, 30% trades in 1 to 2 months time. And it's something that you can learn how to do. So in the next trade, I'm going to show you in the next video, a company that is in the industrial metals market. And I'm going to talk about what I saw in that stock and give some lessons, what I learned, and how you can profit from the kind of things that I'm doing in the stock market. I look forward to talking to you in the next video.